My name is Keith, and from the time I was about 4 years old, I was interested in being a part of the entertainment business. And I've done many things throughout that time, from singing in bands, writing music, hosting television shows, everything involved in the professional wrestling business. And I've written comic books, done a lot of things, and almost all of those things failed in some way or another. But I still kept going. I still wanted to continue to create. And there's just something in me that drives me to create. And I started thinking, well, what is it that drives anyone to create? And that's going to be the point of this podcast. We're going to talk to people from all aspects of the entertainment industry. We're going to find out what made them interested in creating art, and why, when faced with success, when faced with failure, the ups and downs of life and life in the entertainment business, they continue to create. So, and hopefully we'll have some good and interesting conversations along the way that you'll be interested in hearing. So tune in to the Most Excellent Entertainment Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Most Excellent Entertainment Podcast. I'm your host Keith, and with us this week is actor, singer, podcaster, all-around creative entity, Mr. Matt Drago. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good, Keith. Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm really happy to have you here, man. So I'm looking forward to doing this. So let's go ahead and get started at the beginning. When did you first realize that you were interested in the entertainment side of things, the creative side of things, like making art? When did that come to you?
Basically, I can't remember a time where I didn't have that in me, honestly. From a young kid, I really didn't need a lot of toys. I just needed my imagination. I loved creating little, scenarios like with my friends, and little, just kind of characters in my own brain and psyche. And I just kind of morphed into wanting to be on stage and wanting to tell stories on stage. And so I got into every sort of community theater show that I could. I got into a regional theater that I did a couple plays with at Riverside Dinner Theater in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And it just kind of took off from there. Making money, doing what you love, there's nothing better than that, right? So it
Oh,
just
that's
kind
sweet.
of, it created the trajectory for me, which was what's next, after high school. And for me, it was going to live in New York City. Incredibly, I was really close to my grandma. She passed away a few years ago, but I was very close to her, and I lived with her for my college years, which was amazing. I felt like I was going home every night in a big city, and just taking it all in, going to Broadway shows, going to off-Broadway shows, going to off-Broadway shows, just taking every part of New York City in and enjoying just the art and the collaboration that exists there. It's a city like no other, really. And I just, continued to audition. I was at Actors Equity all the time, singing my 16 or 32 bars for Phantom of the Opera, or, the touring Evita show, or whatever it was, and just trying to keep the instrument ready for when the opportunities came. And then it just kind of morphed into meeting a girl, right, in an acting
Sure.
class. And just us deciding, because we had that same love of creativity, to pack up everything one day and go out to LA and keep the dream alive out here. So that's basically what led me to this moment right now.
Awesome. So what was it like moving from Virginia? It sounds like it was a pretty small town. Um,
It's a
to
very
New York.
small town, and I have
Yeah.
a really weird story with my girlfriend then, now my wife,
Awesome.
that we met in this little 12-person acting class, to find out we grew up 3 blocks away from each other in the small town of Front Royal, Virginia. And
That,
so I think a lot of, like, Laura and I, like, we basically had very similar aspirations, and
yeah.
very similar, obviously, backgrounds, being from the same town. And she ended up going to NYU, the Tisch School of the Arts, which is an incredible acting school. I ended up going to Marymount Manhattan College on the Upper East Side, which was phenomenal. Got some great teachers there. And we met in, like I said, a 12-person acting class at T. Schreiber Studios in Chelsea. And she came over to my apartment to rehearse, and I noticed that we had a similar area code. And I said, "Where are you from in Virginia?" "I have a 5-4 area code." And she said, "Front Royal." And I said, "I'm from Front Royal." And she said, "No way." And I said, "Yeah." And basically at that point was like, "Well, no, I mean, my dad's this person, and I know this person, I know this person." She's like, "Okay." And I was like, "Well, what does your family do?" She was like, "My family owns the Apple House, which is like a small little family store off of the interstate that only somebody from that area would know." And
Right.
I said, like literally on 79th Street and Broadway at my grandma's apartment, look at my dresser, and there were three things with the price tag still on them from the Apple House.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So we
Wow.
were paired together in a
Wow.
breakup scene from Say
Yeah.
Anything. So I always joke about this line because it's a breakup scene that we were paired together in, and I
Right.
in my typical, my flair, right? I said, "Well, we've already gotten the breakup out of the way. Are you ready to go out on a date?" And that's when we started
There you go.
dating. And that's where our kind of dreams aligned into one.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, to imagine like you guys could have walked past, I'm sure you did walk past each other on the street
We still
hundreds
look
of
for
times.
pictures. Like we still look for pictures in restaurants and stuff like that, where maybe
Yeah.
one of us is in the background of another. We haven't figured it out yet, but we haven't given up. We haven't given up. I'm
Right.
sure there's one out there for
Yeah, it
sure.
has to exist somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that was a very cool aside. What I what I was what I was going for was what was it like going from like a small theater community to the home of Broadway? Like, what was that transition like? I'm sure there was a lot more competition and but also a lot more opportunities. So
Sure. No, I mean, for me, it didn't feel like I was going to a big city because my family's from New York City originally. So it felt in a way like going back home. I felt like I was definitely one of those newcomers to living in New York City that wasn't looking up at the big skyscrapers. Like I was there for a purpose. I kind of, went to grandma's house for Christmases and Thanksgivings, and my whole family's from either Manhattan proper or Guttenberg across the river in Jersey. So it didn't feel like a big leap for me to go back to New York City. In fact, it kind of made sense. Both of
right,
my parents originally are from New York City, but they moved down to Virginia. So me moving back to New York almost kind of felt full circle for me. And
sure,
like I said, just being with my grandma for those years was one of the most special times that I reflect on all the time, just because I felt like I had a home to go to every night. I felt like, because it's always kind of been a part of my personality, I was hyper focused on the goal and, what I wanted to do with my life. And so, I mean, sure, yes, I love to party. I love to go out with friends. I mean, who doesn't? But for
right,
me, like the main goal was to never let that seep into what I wanted in my life, which was to tell stories for a living. I mean, there really is no greater vocation, at least that I can see for myself, than that, because it just keeps reaffirming your humanity. It keeps having you reinvest investigate things within yourself, and then hopefully broadcasting them to others and having them feel the similar emotions that you're feeling. And I just think it's an incredible human connection through film or theater or any type of performance art.
yeah, for sure. So did you kind of recognize that you could sing at this, was that before or after you started acting, or did it all kind of come together at the same time, or how did that come about?
I mean, it came together at the same time. I feel like I always loved singing. There's a lot of like musical theater around, Virginia at that time. There really was not any film and definitely no TV. So it was basically my only medium to perform growing up. So it really did teach me a lot. I mean, I think that theater performers, we think on our feet. I think all the time about a show that I was in middle school. I played Tom Sawyer, and is it a middle school? And like, I joke all the time, but it's really funny that like basically there was one of our castmates was supposed to come up through like the downstairs, and the janitor had accidentally locked the door, and so Huck and
no.
I are on stage for like 6 or 7 minutes, like basically riffing in the graveyard scene. And it felt effortless, which was
Awesome.
crazy. You know,
Awesome.
it was so fun and
Yeah.
freeing. And I do think that a lot of acting is just really tapping into that creative place where you feel like you've done so much work on the character and you love the character so much that you can do no wrong. You can just be within yourself and just see what comes out. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it all. So, I mean, to answer your question, yeah, I really did. I felt like theater was the way for me to grow and expand. And I think when I moved up to New York City and I studied with Terry Schreiber for 3 years at his studio, and he became like a grandfather to me. He's one of those acting teachers that just, I say this all the time about some acting teachers, that there are just some acting teachers out there that just love their actors. Like they love
Yeah.
them to death. And you feel so safe doing anything because of how you're just protected and you feel safe within their environment. And that is a testament to him. He's greatness. He really is one of the best acting teachers by far that I've ever heard of because of just his mentality and his love for actors. And he was the one that told me, you know, one fall day, because I was up for a lot of Broadway shows, kind of runner up
Sure.
and getting frustrated. You know, it's tough to be close but not get it, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
He brought me into his office for probably a good 30 minutes, maybe it was an hour, I don't know. And he said, you know, maybe you should give LA a shot. Maybe you should, you know,
Nice.
tap into another medium in film and television and go out there. And that at that point, Laura was like, you know, it was another winter, a cold winter, and she was like ready to pack the bags. And we did a road trip right across the country and came here in January, and it was 86 degrees, and we were just like, I think we're gonna
Awesome.
stay here for a while.
Awesome. Just a little personal thing from what's going on in my life right now. I am producing a movie based on a concept that I came up with, and
Amazing.
um, and I will let you know that casting parts, telling people no is rough,
Yeah.
especially when they're super talented. Like it's not, it happens on both sides. I mean, almost everyone who we've cast, either the first or second person, I knew that they were right for the part. But there's this one part that we're kind of struggling with, and we're going to audition like 8 actresses this weekend, and they're all so talented. And I'm so regretting telling 7 of them that we don't have it for them. It's a tough thing to do, man.
It's tough. It's part of the gig. It's part
Yeah,
of the journey. The reality is that you can only do the work from yourself, and a lot of times it is a fit. And I do think that a lot of times, like when you're auditioning for TV and film, I know that you can come in and be completely prepared and feel like you nailed the audition. Well, that's your job. You have to
right.
leave that at the table. Because the reality is, if one of these actors or actresses makes an impression on you, in a way that they weren't right for this film, well, maybe your next film, they will be right for something and you'll remember how prepared they were. So there's many instances of this throughout TV, especially, where someone hasn't gotten a part, but it actually led to a better career trajectory for them
Mhm.
because they kept doing the work. You know, a
Yeah,
lot of great actors always are about doing the work. I got to spend a lot of time with Michelle Hurd on set. She is also an incredible lover of actors, and you can see her becoming like a little girl every time she gets an audition. She still gets the tingles, the goosebumps, the, you know, need to bring herself fully to a role and really enjoy that regardless of the outcome of it. And it's a really
yeah,
beautiful thing when you can stay in that place. I feel like that's when you start to get momentum as an actor, is when you really let the business side of it be the business side of it. And you really just focus on the art part of it because it's really all you have control of at the end of the day. And if you can do that, your love of acting will get you opportunities. I really believe that in the future.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've also done a little bit of acting, and it was funny because the first movie that I actually have been in, because I've been in one movie so far, But I've tried a couple of others that didn't work out. But the movie was originally going to be based around my character, and then as the movie got bigger, they decided that they wanted to bring in like more experienced actors, I guess, to lead the movie. And then my role got reduced to one scene, and then something happened with the film. Um, I don't know exactly what, but they ended up having to use it because it was shot in the wrong aspect ratio or something. So they had to use it as like a little blip while they were running the credits. And I went from being like the star of the movie to witness number one. And it was like, I still, I did my best. I was really proud of the scene. And I thought, and then to make it up to me, they gave me a larger part in the sequel. Then they got a script editor who didn't feel like my part was necessary. So I became a background extra. And it's just like, it sucks, but I guess it's just kind of what happens sometimes. So
That's a rare case. I
I
mean,
see your face. You don't look happy at all.
I'm
Like,
not happy for you.
yeah,
I really no. I think that's
yeah,
really hard because you
yeah,
did a lot of the work, and I think a lot of
I
people
did.
don't understand like how much work it takes to be carrying a story and
Yeah,
really taking on that responsibility and owning it and putting the
yeah,
work in. I mean, acting is work. I tell people that all the time. Like it's yes, I get that a lot of it is press and maybe you're on a cool podcast like I am today, or you're in a
right.
magazine, or you're walking a red carpet, but the day in day out of acting for most actors, that are just trying to make a living being actors is not glamorous. It's not.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
really not. That's just the God's honest truth. And so when I hear a story like that, it does upset me because I'm like, maybe they went into it not really understanding what their story was. If they
yeah.
were willing to give you a part that would have carried the film and then they edited you out of it, then maybe they weren't so sure about the film because I think regardless of star power, I think the actual story of the film and what you're trying to sell through that story is always way more meaningful than a star actor. I think it's
I agree.
something that sometimes directors and producers get a little bit I don't know, they lock into it a little bit more. Again, you have to remember that they are trying to sell the film. So there is that
Right.
part of it that I do understand, but you
Yeah,
can't let go of what your story is. That is the most important thing in selling your film is remembering what the words were on the page that you first wrote. Because
right.
a lot of times actors, regardless of whether they're first or 20th on the call sheet, my next gig, I might be 20th on the call sheet, right? It
Sure.
doesn't matter. A lot of actors, you can tell if they're pros or not. And it doesn't matter how many things they've booked. It doesn't matter how long the trajectory of their career is. I mean, sometimes it is right place, right time, right?
Yeah,
And I do think that, it does upset me to hear a story like that because in my mind, you did the work, you came prepared, you auditioned, and it feels like you got screwed over because you kind of did, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
it also kind of, in my mind, makes me think, well, it seems like they didn't have a really clear idea of what their story was. And sometimes producers and directors are scared to stick with their original story because they get starstruck in a way.
Yeah.
They want to sell, but you can't just sell the actor. I mean, unless it's Tom Cruise or you know what I mean? Like
Right. Of
unless
course.
it's like,
Of course.
but again, for most actors, right? Unless you're the top of the top movie star, most films don't sell themselves on a star name. They sell
Right.
themselves on what that story is that grabs you as an audience member, that's going to make you pay $20 for a ticket, that's going to make you watch that film, that's going to tell two of your friends about that film. Like, you're not going to talk about necessarily, oh, well, it's got this and this and this and this and this and this person in it. You're going to
Right.
say, the story was about this and it was so powerful. And I really want people to see it because it's got a great message to it. That is what you're going to walk out of a theater saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had that discussion with other guests actually, that like you can have the highest star power in a movie, but if it doesn't sell the story, then it's worthless. And you can have a movie, well, not worthless. I mean, people did put their time and their effort into it,
Sure.
but if you can't connect to it, then it didn't do its job properly.
It didn't do its
You know?
job. It didn't
Yeah.
accomplish what it meant to accomplish. I mean,
Right.
you want people to see your film at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
And I always say that the most powerful way to sell your film is to sell the story.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
I'm
and
sorry that
you're right.
happened to you, man. That's
Oh,
that's that's that's
you're fine.
gut-wrenching.
It's fine. I mean, honestly, they did actually completely rewrite the story. It was supposed to originally be like a mock documentary type of thing where I was a documentary guy who was tracking down this killer who had injured me, and I was trying to figure out what was motivating him, and it turned into a cop tracking down the killer to bring him to justice. So it was like they completely changed the focus of the story. And I mean, the movie came out relatively good. I think the narrative is a little choppy, to be honest,
You
but
know what it taught you though? I mean, this is where I do feel like I'm at in my career too,
yeah,
is why are you making your own film right now? It's because you want to
right,
be in creative control. And I think
absolutely,
that's the next step for a lot of actors that are also collaborators, because there's
right,
no greater joy than collaborating with your crew, your cinematographer, your editor, your actors. Like, there's just no better joy than that, and I think you're about to discover that. So I'm really
yeah,
proud of you
thank
for
you,
taking that next step, because I'm sure part of this is coming about because of the pain that you felt through the other process where you felt control less, right?
yeah,
Because you didn't
yeah, yeah,
have points on the film, you weren't a producer on the film, right?
not at all,
So
yeah, not at
so
all,
maybe that in and of itself was, and you kind of have to look at it this way, even though it sucks, is like maybe it was a gift for you to accomplish what you're going to accomplish in the future by creating a team and having more creative control and making sure that when you get into production, you remember what the story is, and even more
yeah,
so when you get into post production,
yeah,
remembering what the story is. Because again, it is so hard when there's the movie you plan, the movie you shoot, and the movie you cut. And it's
yeah,
three different
yeah,
processes, but a lot of
yeah,
people lose the movie, they lose that script when they get to the third stage, because then you've
yeah,
got distributors that have their, say in things. You've got different, people, different entities telling you
right,
this and this and that. And you have to keep it your film. And especially if you're the writer of it, you have to I mean, you have to go back to your own script sometimes,
right,
because
right,
sometimes you forget what your own film is about. And
right,
sometimes you go back to those original scenes and you're like, oh my gosh, well, I cut that scene, but I'm losing that whole character's backstory. I
right,
need to
right,
figure out how to incorporate that, or else the audience isn't going to understand the emotional hook of that character. So there are tough decisions that you have to make, and there are
yeah,
things that you have to cut out. But if you're cutting out something that leaves a hole in the tapestry of the story that you created,
mhm,
I think that's a mistake.
absolutely, yeah. So I am not really a writer. I write songs, but the idea of writing an entire script, I've tried writing a book once and I tried writing a comic book once, and neither one of them were very successful. So I actually hired a writer. But the thing that was crazy is when she sent me her treatment and then she sent me like a 3 act breakdown of the characters and everybody's arc, I cried.
Wow.
Like she got it. I was smiling and crying at the same time. Like I can't really tell much about the project, honestly, obviously, but the tone is the most important thing about this project. It
Mm-hmm.
has to it has to feel right from beginning to end. Like that is and it's going to be hard, honestly. Like, I feel like I came up with a pretty tricky concept, but if we pull it off, it's going to be amazing. And so for her to get
Yeah.
that, just from a little conversation with me, I mean, I think I'm in good hands right now. And the editor is the same guy who produces my podcast. So he
Nice.
knows me well. Um, and we've talked a lot about, and he's just like, look, I'm not going to take anything out. I'm not even going to make music decisions without asking you first. I'm just like, awesome, man. So I'm really happy with, I'm tearing up a little bit behind these glasses right now talking about it.
Nice. Nice.
But I'm really happy with the people that I've got helping me make it happen, honestly. So it's really
So
early right now, but I'm excited. So
yeah, film is a team sport, and that's like I said, the collaboration part of it is something that I feel like probably came out of this for you, and I think it's like the most joy that you get out of it is finding people that are masters of their craft, whether, it's an editor that you really trust, where you give them the raw footage and you say, cut it together, piece it together, show me what my story looks like,
yeah,
because again, that's another master of craft, a cinematographer that understands the shots that you
right.
envision in your head, right? The collaboration in that, the collaboration of the set designer, such a huge part of it, the costumes, the lighting, the feel of it, right? It's
Yeah,
all baked into what makes film great. It's such a collaborative art, and everybody is a master of their own domain. And if you just let them be that, then you've got a team for the next film and the next film and the next
exactly.
film, because it becomes
Yeah,
less about conversations. It's like, I know what to expect from you. You know what to expect from me. I mean, there's no big shocker in my mind that a lot of actors work with the same directors over and over
right,
again, because it's a, you don't even have to have the conversation anymore. You can
right.
actually play around with it. You could be like, "Hey Matt, try this thing." "Oh yeah, yeah, that's that. I like that. Let's try that." Like
Yeah,
it's like maybe little adjustments here and there, but at the end of the day, at that point, you probably
yeah,
know what you're going to expect from me as an actor, and I know what to expect from you as a director, and this is just a beautiful collaboration. Like
yeah,
it's a beautiful relationship that you have. And so if you have that with other people on set, like you're just going to keep making films. So I go back to the pain that you suffered with that role, and I can feel that. I have felt that before. I think that it ends up leading, if you are strong and you push past it, like I think it leads you to where you are right now, creating your own projects, and that's a win. That's a huge win.
thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like it. I feel like this project is a win. I feel so good about it right now. I mean, um, yeah,
Do you
and
know how
I,
many people like try to create films and like just
yeah,
have ideas for a film like at 2 a.m. at night and then like
right.
never do
Never
anything with
happens.
it? Like there's
Yeah,
so many steps. It's like film is hard. It's not
it is.
easy,
It is.
and you're just starting in the process of the casting. Like believe me, I mean, it gets harder, but the end result is so gratifying that
Yeah,
you just and especially it's more gratifying when you have people around you that you truly love. So if you have that, like if you have that family around you, you're gonna get the bug and you're gonna want to do it again and again. You're gonna keep telling great stories. So,
yeah. I
really
mean,
proud of you, man.
thanks, man. I mean, I'm a lot like you in that I was probably about 4 when I realized that I wanted to do creative things, and um music was my main focus for a really long time, honestly. Um and now I'm getting older and I kind of beat up my vocal cords and beat up my eardrums because I was playing rock music. And
Nice.
I'm just looking for more creative outlets, and honestly, I'm actually planning on recording an album next year too. So I mean, I'm just trying
Sweet.
to. I'm all over the place, man. But
Good.
but
Be
yeah,
all
I've
over
got
the place. That's a
yeah,
good place to be.
yeah, for sure. I just want to get everything out there that I can. That's how I feel right now. I don't know. I'm just. I mean, I got this energy right now. I don't know what it is, but there's this creative energy around me that I feel like I have to harness it. So
It's called
hence the
momentum. And I
podcast.
mean,
Hence,
again, like momentum is the biggest thing in a creative mind is if
yeah,
you start to spiral downward and not get on podcast interviews like this and share your story or reach out to people that can collaborate with you and create teams of people and friendships and relationships that lift you up, and it can be in or out of the art. You could have a
Yeah.
guy that just wants to watch football with you on Sunday that gets you almost out of, like, I mean, football is a religion for me on Sundays because it
Okay.
because it basically levels me out from the
Right.
week, right? I'm a full-time realtor in Los
Right.
Angeles County. There's a lot of stress that comes with that. There's a lot of
Sure.
responsibility that comes with that. There's a lot of knowledge that comes with that. But my
Right.
love is acting and my love is creating stories that matter. That is what I want my legacy to be when I leave this planet, is I want to leave a few good stories that matter and that
Yeah.
resonate through time. And so for me, that's the pressure I put on myself, is to, how do I create that? Now, lucky for me, I married a beautiful lady who is a writer, and she is just crushing it right now. She's on her sixth script, and we've got our own production company, Dragon Hunter Productions. If you want to look us up on Instagram or on dragonhunterproductions.com, we've got a website too. Is we are trying to tell stories in little pockets of the country that feel like they don't have a voice. Because I feel like that's where we are as a society right now, is that a lot of dissonance that's happening that I see in our society is because people aren't feeling heard. And we
Yeah.
want those stories to be told. I mean, that was what was so magnetic about being on set for Somewhere in Montana, was realizing how important it was for all of these people to, in this little town, have their voices be heard, have their little
Right.
corner of the world be shown. It just really brought a lot of people a lot of joy, and they hadn't even seen the movie yet. We were just shooting it. But
Right.
it just goes to show you, like, that film is a team sport. Like, I think that's like a big thing about Laura and I, is we want to bring a film back to our original hometown of Front Royal, Virginia. And the reason
Oh,
we want
awesome.
to do that is because we want to include all the people that we love. And we might need to reach out to that guy that we know that owns the lumber shop, or that guy that owns the movie theater, or this, we're going to pull pieces together because we want it to be part of their legacy too. It's
Yeah.
not just for us, it's for everybody. And if we do it, then every single person on that credit played some part in the movie being what it was. And that's a very special thing when you look back for any of those people that are on those final credits, to be like, yeah, I was a part of that. And I'm really proud of it.
That's awesome. I was gonna say, like, I saw that you guys actually went to Montana on location and shot, right?
Yeah.
Like, generally, you would transform, Toronto into Montana or New Zealand into Montana, like to actually go to the location where the story is taking place. That first of all, I was like, wow, that seems like a really special thing to do to me, or do. Yeah, right. Okay. It seems like a really special thing to do. Yeah. What was that experience like? Like,
I just remember literally driving into Polson the first time and seeing that beautiful Flathead Lake and the mountains and the trees. And I just felt like this was going to become a family. Like, I really felt that. And I love the idea of actors and artists coming together to collectively tell a story that's bigger than themselves. And Montana has a very mystical energy to it. It's so grand. It's so big. It really puts you back into yourself, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah,
Um, because again, I'm from New York to LA, and
right,
so I've always been in a very, you could say, complicated, complex type of society with a much faster pace. And to get to be there for 6 weeks and to get to shoot a beautiful film and to just be around such great actors. I mean, Graham, Michelle, Andrew, Kaylee, Tasha, they all became such close friends of mine. And it was just because we really loved the story and we really just enjoyed being together. I mean, we'd go on hikes together. We'd go out to get our bison steaks together. Graham and I would have like little, breakfast dates where we would like talk shop about, like, because we have one scene in the movie that's almost 10 pages long, that's just the two of us, which is very rare in
That's a
film.
lot.
It
Yeah.
is. And it delves deep into just kind of this dissonance that we're feeling in our society. And it is. It's just it's this collective art of having so many people just being in love with a story.
Yeah.
And you can't be in love with the place that you're telling it because it's just beautiful. But I mean, you don't have those types. I mean, that isn't something to overlook. You can be on set in LA and have your guest star and maybe meet one of the lead actors or talk to the DP and the director maybe for like 15, 20 minutes and then bye, and
Yeah.
you might not see them again for a long time or ever. This felt like something where we all really connected. We all really I remember when I rapped, it was so hard. It's hard to rap a character in a film that you love so much because you feel like you're giving a part of yourself away. And
Yeah.
I actually had to dive into Flathead Lake on my birthday, which is the last day that we shot, and just to kind of like exert the character and the energy and to like let it go because I think what I was feeling at that moment was all of the energy that everybody had put into me and
Yeah.
how grateful I was for all of that. And I'm talking about the gaffer, the best boy, the sound tech, the everybody, like everybody that was on that set, like I knew by name and they were so crucial to the film. I mean, I say this all the time, the crew like is your core. If you don't
Yeah.
have a good crew, you don't have a film. And our
Right.
crew just absolutely sacrificed everything to make this film happen, and they did such an extraordinary job. So when I rapped, it was just a thank you because I felt like everything that I was able to give as an actor in this film was only because what they had given me. So it was like
Yeah.
basically just me recycling that energy and just putting it right back into the universe. And I feel like when you see Somewhere in Montana, I think you see the relationships. I think you see the camaraderie. Like I think a lot of that film's power and magic happened because of the chemistry that the whole cast and crew had together.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So talking about telling bigger stories, um, I saw that you've done at least one faith-based film. Is that something that's important to you? How did that come about?
I loved that film. That was a really great film that I did. What Would Jesus Do? The Journey Continues with John Schneider, Mike C. Manning. It was pretty cool to get to play the bad guy. I like to play the bad guy. It's kind of fun. It's not something that I seek, but something that I'm absolutely open to. I mean, there's stories in every medium that matter and that make an impact. And this one was about bullying, and I played the bully. And I've never gotten bullied in my life, but when you get a role like this, you get to almost experience empathetically what it would be like if you had been in that situation. I was very grateful that I wasn't in that situation. I grew up in a dojo. I'm a fourth degree black belt. I've never gotten into a fight in my life. My dad is my sensei. So I like
Awesome.
literally grew up like a ninja turtle with three other brothers, and I just knew how to take care of myself. So it wasn't anything that I ever got involved with or needed to, but again, I know that I would protect my friends. I mean,
Yeah.
if there was ever a situation, like I remember I was on tour and one of my friends was mistreated, and that's when I would have gotten into a fight. So
Sure.
because it wasn't me, it was them, and I lo love them so much. So yeah, I think that what was the original question? I got off track there for a
Oh,
second.
just telling stories like that. Is that something that's important to you? Like,
It is. I think any story in any medium that really has a purpose is something that I will always connect to. And even the ones that maybe I don't connect to, there's always a way to find the humanity in a character. I always try. And sometimes it's a little bit harder. You could have one line on a TV show and, there's not much
right.
there to create a character around. But I love writing backstories. I love thinking about backstories like obsessively. I just think that like it broadens your perspective on when you finally get to set and you finally do say the words, you've almost put yourself in a position where you don't know what's going to happen. And that is
Right.
acting. And that's like that's the line you walk as an actor is you want to do so much preparation. I always say like actors do all their work in pre-production. When
Sure.
it comes to production, it's the crew carrying the weight. They are the stars of the show.
Right.
They are the thing, they're the entity that is making the magic happen. But, for an actor, you still have to be technical. You have to know where your eye line is. You have to still connect with the actor. Sometimes it's a little weird shot where like I'm looking at an X on the wall and like acting towards that because of the shot.
Right.
But if it is that, you have to rely on all the work that you did in pre-production. You have to work on all that character study that you did. And you really, as an actor, have to love that part of it. That's the
Yeah.
part of it that I think is overlooked. You don't ever want that to feel like homework. You want it to feel like investigation. Like it's
Yeah.
it's something that is exciting to you, that
Right.
fires you up. And when you have that fire in you, then you go to set and you look at a great actor like Graham or Michelle or anybody on set, and you just get to work. And then the magic happens out of that.
Sure. So I'm 50. So I grew
Looking
up
good, man.
on, oh, thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Um, I, uh, I grew up on the Dukes of Hazzard, and then,
Sweet.
yeah, and then John Schneider's, Christmas specials, and he's just always kind of been present. And I actually remember the internet campaign for his Christian movies. I don't know if it's specifically the one that you were in, but I remember like that he was pushing those movies very hard on the internet. Um, and he seems really dedicated. Like, just that's what I get from him is like everything he does, he just seems like he puts a lot into it. Is that a fair assessment? Like, what was it like to work with him?
He's such a pro.
Yeah,
He's so calm,
yeah,
just like he's done it many times before, which he has, but very
right.
giving, not in his own area, like very much a part of the cast.
Yeah,
And it's pretty exceptional for someone like him to do that, because what I will tell you about What Would Jesus Do? The Journey Continues is that John, and I don't know how he does this, but he does, he was there for 1 day. He did that
wow.
film in 1 day. So me, I was actually there for 2 days because I had a retake and da 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 da. But for him, they were able to schedule him. I think it was a long 14-hour day or something like that, where they
Right.
just went through all of his scenes in 1 day. And it takes a pro. It takes a
Yeah,
pro that has that muscle memory, that has that skill set, that has that calm. Because again, maybe the camera isn't working. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna
right.
get a snack from Crafty or whatever. Like just go with the flow. Like it's knowing how to keep yourself centered if you
Yeah,
are taking on a heavy weight like that and condensing your schedule. I'll say that for Graham too. Graham did Somewhere in Montana in 2 weeks. So when Graham showed up to set, it was go time on Graham. We had to basically concise the schedule. Everything that I shot obviously was with Graham in those 2 weeks, but he had a lot more that he
right.
had to get in those 2 weeks, and I was there for 6 weeks. So there were some days when Graham was there that I wasn't even used because we needed to get that. So it's a lot of scheduling, but I think there's an inherent motivation that comes from that too. I would love to be in that position at some point because it does kind of motivate you, and
Yeah,
it does in a way give back to the next generation of filmmakers and the next generation of actors, because maybe they're doing that film like because they can do it in a shorter amount of time on maybe less than what their normal rate would be, and that
sure.
gives the production the ability to thrive, to be able to put
Yeah,
that extra money into building that set or, hiring another name actor or whatever it is. And I felt like Graham and Michelle specifically, they really loved this film so much that
Yeah.
they, made a little sacrifice and figured out what their schedule would be to be a part of it so that, actors like me and Kaylee Macchio and Macchio, sorry, and I say it the Italian way, and Tasha Gate, could thrive because we got to be in scenes with them. And when do you have an opportunity to do that unless an actor is willing to figure out their schedule? Because a lot of these TV shows and films, I mean, they're long shooting schedules, so it would
Right.
have to be like a break, like he had a break from House of the Dragon,
Right.
Game of Thrones, to be able to come. And I think they were in New Zealand or
Sure.
somewhere, right? And he
Sure.
flew in and had the 2 weeks and did his stuff and then went back, and he was present the whole time. That's what's
That's
incredible
awesome.
to me. I mean, he's got another character in a show, the biggest show, like in
Right.
another world, and he is
Right.
able to be a professional, compartmentalize that, get on a plane, travel halfway across the world, be with me, be with like all these actors for 2 weeks, enjoy it, really
Yeah.
enjoy it, do a great job. He's such a phenomenal actor, but honestly, I see him more as just an amazing human being now.
That's
Like,
awesome.
and that's just kind of the bond that we created. I mean, we would just have so many great, long, lengthy conversations, and I've just felt like he was always with me. He was always so present with me, and you never know if you're going to get that really. And
Right. Right. Right.
I was so grateful. I mean, him and Michelle specifically, they're just such lovers of actors, and they really like they've been around so long that like they will teach you skill sets that you and lessons that you need to learn. And just
Right.
part of that in and of itself is the win when you think of a booking or, getting the role or whatever like that. It's a lot of the stuff that you actually gain from this is actually a lot of the off stage stuff, the non-shooting stuff where you're
Sure.
hanging out with those people. That is the inspiration that gets you to the next and to the next and to the next. And those relationships matter, just being able to like reach out to Michelle or Graham and, pick their brain on something. It's really valuable. Like it's because again, they know better than me. They've done it longer than I have. But
Yeah.
having more people like that are as professional and loving and caring as they are, it really does. It raises you up, and you have to stay around people in your life that lift you up and never let you
Absolutely.
down.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's super important. I can't even imagine like switching that switch in your mind to go from like this fantasy world, to something that's grounded in reality. Like, is there anything more real than Montana? I mean, like, yeah, and to go,
I
yeah,
I would wake up in the morning and I would literally just look at that Flathead Lake and I drink my
yeah,
coffee and think about giving away a scene. You have to remember, like when you have 2 years to work on a role like I did, which is rare, but we got pushed back a year, and I was one of the first that basically got booked with the original cast, and then they reached out to other people. Uh, it's really hard to get rid to give away a scene
yeah,
because it's something that's kind of been a part of you, and you've in your mind, if you're kind of as obsessive as I am, you go
right,
over it so many times to an exhausting parallel of your brain where you're just kind of like you almost need to like give birth to it. You need to get it off your chest. But when you do get it on film and you do let it go, there's a little bit of a loss there too, because you'll
yeah, for
never get
sure,
to do that scene again. You'll never get to be in that barn with Graham and this like just meaty 10-page scene that we have in the film. I mean,
right,
if there are people that are interested in this film, I would go see it. For there are just some powerful scenes in that film, and
right,
they're all based on like listening to each other and respect, which is the highest form of love, and
yeah,
just really really a great story of the times. And that's what we need podcasts like you to
Right.
tell your listeners, because it really is, this is a word of mouth film. Indie films, and you'll know this, like when you produce your own films, like indie films are in need of word of mouth. Like we need people to essentially, go to the movie and tell two of their friends, and those two friends tell two of their friends. We need word of mouth because again, it's $20 a ticket, right? And we're up
Right.
against
Right.
big marketing budgets and big budget movies, and so I really do. I again, I go back to what we had talked about in the beginning. Like it's the story. It's
Yeah.
always going to be the story that hooks the person to want to see the film.
Right. Right. Now, for me, when I started doing a podcast, it was kind of because I wanted to connect with other creative people and just see what their journey was, and whether it was similar than mine or different from mine. I just was very interested in it. Um, what was it that got you motivated to start a podcast?
Well, I mean, I haven't started my own podcast.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I read somewhere that you.
Well, here's the thing.
Okay.
At least a talk
Okay.
podcast. My
Gotcha.
wife has written podcasts, and our production company has
Ah.
produced.
Oh,
So,
okay. Okay. I
so,
gotcha.
so last year, I'll circle back to Austin Film Festival, which there's a
Okay.
trophy over there that my wife won, which is the bronze typewriter, which is the coolest statue because it's got like a little film strip coming out of the back of this, and it's a heavy trophy. But
Sure. Sure.
we went there a couple years ago, and she had her first script, which is a passion project of hers that she wants to make eventually. And she had a couple really, really good friends there that basically said, when you're writing a feature, a lot of times you're up against people that have been, staff writers that have had scripts, picked up by Sony or Universal. It's just everybody's trying to write a feature, basically.
Sure.
And so these people befriended her and they said, writing is writing. It doesn't
Right.
matter what the medium is. Why don't you come back next year and write a podcast? Now,
Okay.
my wife is an A+ student. So not only did she want to write a podcast, she
Yeah.
wanted to produce that podcast. That way, if she won, she could drop the episodes that everybody had seen her win the podcast for at that exact same moment.
Awesome. That's
Right?
awesome. Yeah.
And it really is. It's so cool because a lot of like there have been people that have asked her if she's interested in optioning it for a TV show, which of course,
Of
a really,
course. Yeah.
really cool story. The Crime at Camp Ashwood, if you look it up on wherever you get your podcasts, it's up everywhere, Spotify,
Yeah.
Apple. And it's just it's a really great medium because if you think about it, if I gave you as an executive a 120-page document to read, well, I mean,
Right.
like you got a life. It's like it's hard to get through that 100 page to it, and maybe you got another one coming, you got to read it, blah, blah. But if you pop in your earbuds, right? Like people are going to
Yeah.
be listening to this podcast right now where they're probably at the gym or they're picking up their kids from school. I mean, that's the time of the day that you have to maybe hear somebody's story or to, escape a little bit. And so
Right.
podcasts are a great way to do that. So when she wrote this podcast script and then won this, it's like it's the best medium, I believe, in the current state of the industry to get executives to really not only know your work as far as reading it, but experience your work because you can fill it in. You can
Yeah.
cast the actors. You can do your own sound effects. You can edit it a certain way. You can create the world for them as opposed to them creating it off of the page for you. Because I feel like there's only so much you can get sometimes reading it. Maybe you don't understand this part, you don't understand that part. But if it's in the world of a podcast and you've got great actors, which again, it's no better thing than getting to hire actors. And when you get to, I
Yeah.
mean, when you're telling actors they got the part, I mean, that is just joy in and of itself. So we put this podcast together. We'd already had another one come out, St. Mary's Children with the Stigmata. And
Oh,
we have two podcasts, and now the next logical step for us as a production company is to tackle the feature film. And so, and that's
awesome.
just because we've started with the podcast writing, and now she's got the accolades from that. So we've worked our way up, basically getting her writing out there in a medium where people can easily access it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sorry I misunderstood. I read somewhere that you were a podcaster. Like that's just how they described you. So I assumed you had your own podcast. So
Well, I guess I do in a way, but only in the sense that they're basically a lot of my wife's talents and my production company and
sure.
our ability to, I think our podcast, she actually, as of tomorrow, is starting her own podcast.
Oh, fun.
You might have just sparked me to maybe start my own at some
There you
point.
go.
I've got a pretty good setup here, so I
You
guess I
do.
could do
Yeah.
that. But I've been so busy with the acting thing and the real estate thing that at this
Right.
point, I just really want the feature to come together. It's a
Yeah.
Christmas
Yeah, for sure.
movie. It's a passion project. I feel like it would be full circle to bring a film back to where we're originally from that we didn't even know we were
Yeah.
from until we met in New York City. So, and just the joy of putting together, so many people that we know, love, and trust to
Right.
create a film together. That is kind of my main focus right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually in the process of right now, my son and I live in a converted garage.
Nice.
But we're moving into a 3 bedroom house, but keeping the property that the garage is on.
To do
So
like a
I'm
little
actually in the
tour.
process of turning it into a studio right now. That's what I'm
Yes,
moving
that's
for. Yeah.
great. That's
Um,
great.
to not just record the podcast, but also, I mean, we can shoot film in this thing. Like, we could turn this building into almost anything we want. Like, it could become a restaurant or someone's apartment, or, I mean, we could literally transform it. So I'm pretty excited to have my own little studio that'll be behind my house. I'm pretty, pretty psyched for it, man.
That's awesome, man. And that's another cool thing that's happening because I don't know where you are, but I mean, like
Yeah.
film happens everywhere. Like now,
Right. Right.
it's so different than it used to be, where you needed to be in LA, and then it kind of branched out to Atlanta with a lot of the Marvel stuff. Like now, yeah, I mean, if there's a Montana film, like where else would you shoot it except for in
Right.
Montana? Because that film looks like it punches so high above its weight because
Yeah.
of the beautiful mountains and sky and just like grandness of it. And somewhere in
Right.
Montana uses these anamorphic lenses that basically make like it basically compresses the image so you see more of the Montana skyline. So if you've got a production and you've got a need to make something, I mean, productions are going to go where they can survive at this
Sure.
point.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
mean, I actually live in Connorsville, Indiana.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, I'm from Ithaca, New York,
Okay.
but
Cool.
now I live in Southern Indiana. And there's honestly a pretty decent creative community down here, like of actors and especially filmmakers. There's tons of independent films coming out of this area, like the Southern Indiana area. Then they're all on Tubi and stuff. And everybody's working hard, and getting their stuff seen. So it's really cool. It's a
I
cool
love that.
little
I love
cool
creatives
environment.
that like, yeah, the need to create, the will to create. Like I said, it's work. It's
Yeah,
there's like I always say there's two types of people in the world. There are the ones that seek contentment and the ones that are obsessed with the dream. And
yeah,
I love being obsessed with the dream. I love
yeah.
being obsessed with my legacy of leaving a couple good stories behind. It's
Sure.
not a grand legacy, but it's one that's really meaningful to me. And
Yeah,
I hope that people can, that's the great thing about film is that people can look back on that and be like, wow, that really holds up. Or I'm learning something different from this film based on where the world's at now that maybe didn't even exist when the film came out. There's a lot of
right, right.
things that films do that surpass the test of time, and those are the kinds of films that I hope to create.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just came up on the hour mark. I want to go ahead and this has been a great conversation. First of all, I'm glad we got to connect and kind of share different stories and stuff. That's really what this is all about. So Before we go, you've already touched on some of it, but where can people find you? What kind of projects do you have coming up? What kind of projects do you have out right now that you think people should check out? So go
Sure.
right ahead. That's for you. Yeah.
Well, definitely. I'm most active on my Instagram. Don't really do much on Facebook, but they're connected. But Matt Drago, at Matt Drago, is where I do most of my updates for upcoming things, write-ups, articles, podcasts, right? Anything that's going on. And that's where I'll be doing the updates for Somewhere in Montana, which is coming out January 10th, 2025. So only a few months away. I'm really looking forward to that. Again, it's a great film of the times. It's a Montana rancher meets a West Coast director, and just kind of that instant dissonance that happens between us and how we work through it and hope to build some kind of like understanding. And that's kind of the core element of the movie. So be on the lookout for that. Matt Drago on Instagram, at Dragon Hunter Productions on Instagram. Also, I have websites, mattdrago.com, dragonhunterproductions.com. And if you go to my Instagram, you'll have a link tree. So you'll have all my social media accounts and everything. Give me a follow and connect with me there.
Awesome. How cool is Linktree, by the way? Like,
It's so cool. I love
everything.
Linktree.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
it's
a big
very cool.
Linktree fan. Yes.
For sure. And so then the final question that everybody gets asked who comes on the podcast. It sounds like your journey has been honestly pretty inspiring and pretty propulsive. Like, it seems like you're constantly moving forward. What is it that keeps you wanting to create and continuing to put stuff out in the world as a creative person?
The need to tell great stories, the need to tell stories that matter, the need to tell stories that resonate to people, that make them grow, question, evolve. Stories matter.
Yeah.
They really matter. And especially now, I think stories matter more now than they ever have. Human stories.
Yeah.
Human stories. And that's basically what I want to do with my life, is leave that behind as my legacy, to leave some great human stories behind.
That's awesome, Matt. Thank you so much. Like I said, this has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it, man.
Me too.
Thanks. All right. And I want to thank Tyler, ME Productions. I legitimately could not do this without him. I am not a technical guy. He's the one who makes this sound as good as it can and makes us look as good as we can. And I want to thank everybody for listening to the Most Excellent Entertainment Podcast. And we'll be back next week with more. Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate you.